So Christ went down to Nazareth, and he pierced the heart of a man named Jesus to instill love in the entire world, not just for his day, but for generations to come. The Savior. Jesus said, I have come that you might have life more abundantly. His greatest commandments were about love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. That's what we're here to do in this season. We are here to let that Christ love be born in us. And especially today. And today we are going to focus on a love that is present here and now. You know, a minister once said to me, that was mentoring me, he says, "Are you here today, Tony?" I said, "Yeah, I'm here." He said, "Yeah, but are you here? Are you here?" And he meant the presence. He didn't mean the physical. He meant the presence of who I truly am. Is your presence here? If not, we need to turn around and show up face to face with who you are here in this moment, who you are, and let that shine. Let that shine. Because that is when you are serving God at the fullest, is when you let that Christ expression that was created so beautifully and uniquely as you shine through. Today we're going to talk about that Christ expression and how it shows up in the form of love. That's the biggest question, is what is love? What is love? People ask that all the time. You know, they never ask what gratitude is, what joy is, what peace is. We experience that all the time. But love is one of those ambiguous things that gets a bad rap sometimes. And it's such a broad spectrum, you know. We might call it the love spectrum because it encompasses all sorts of components of experiences and behaviors, right? People kill for love. People are at their highest and best in love. And somewhere in between is where we're mostly at. And John says, whoever does not love does not know God because God is love. Okay, we know that God is love. But what is love? You know, interestingly enough, I was looking online about different quotes for literally the novelists that are quoting about what love is. Because most of the novels that we read are about love. One says love is a temporary insanity curable by marriage. I see the point there. What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love. Right? Unable to love. Wow. Imagine that, being unable to love. Or, more rightly said, being unwilling to love. Because we are all able to love because we are love. Love is an untamed force. When we try to control it, it destroys us. When we try to imprison it, it slaves us. And when we try to understand it, it leaves us feeling lost and confused. So what is it? What is it? It's a general term that includes all of those things. All of those things. There are many kinds that do not necessarily feel good either. You know, a lot of times we think of love and we think of the feel-good kind of love. But have you ever thought, you know, they say that love has no opposite. But then other people say love Fear is a lack of love. It's a void where there's no love in your heart. But have you ever thought of fear as a form of love? And before you say no, think about it for a minute. Think of all the lessons that you've learned from having fear. Sometimes fear can be a good thing, right? It can save your life. Sometimes it keeps you from making a bad choice. What would send that kind of fear into your life? A God love, right? God sends that kind of fear in your life to pull you away from dangers, to pull you away from pain, to pull you away from suffering. Because most of the time fear comes knocking at your door, you're not going to answer it because you know it doesn't feel good. You know? Sorry, I'm not buying what you're selling. But if we listen to the still small voice that says, what's on the other side of that door may be coming from a God love, from agape love, then maybe we might open that door and let it in. You know, fears are just stories that most of the time that we tell ourselves. They're not the kind of fears that come from love, but they're the kind of fears that we buy into these stories that comes back through this little lens of the I am. The little lens that we see ourselves as. When we peer out and we think we're the small little person inside of a body. And we look out that peer and that lens right there has everything to do with how we believe we are. What we believe we are. And you know, as a child, you've changed that lens. Maybe it was as a scared small child, everything looked fearful. But as you grow older and you change that lens, now all of a sudden I'm empowered to do things. As Paul said, I put away the childish things. Now I think like an adult. And now I can see that those things I feared before were just that. They're just stories that I made up. There is no boogeyman. There is nothing out there that's trying to get me. So love has no opposites. No opposites. So just as love can be misdirected, so can fear. We can allow our fears to get out of hand. We can allow our fears to become bigger than life. And because love is so powerful, you cannot escape it. The real question is, what form of love is knocking at my door? What form of love is welling up in my heart? Is it the kind of love that's trying to fill a void? You know, many people mistake love for lots of things. Lust is one of them. The others are a pseudo-love because they need to fill this void in their heart. For so many years they've suppressed this self-love that's natural for us. It's natural for us to look at the admiration of the Christ expression that each one of us are. But when we suppress that in a low self-image, we suppress it long enough, it needs to get out. And so along comes an opportunity for you to let that escape. So sometimes it's like a volcano. When people fall in love, or they erupt into love, because it's something that's been locked up inside of them for so long. It's either filling a void that should have been filled by their own self-love. Their own self-love. The kind of love that we were talking about before that is knocking at your heart and telling you to feel the presence of joy and peace by having a healthy self-image of who you are. By admiring the Christ expression of who you are. Now, a lot of times that gets misunderstood because people say, well, isn't that kind of arrogant? Isn't that kind of arrogant? Who do you think you are? You know, you hear that little voice in the back of your head. Who do you think you are? Well, see, we're not talking about that little person that was judged, that little me that you grew up with thinking that you are. We're not talking about that small self that Jesus said to give up. We're talking about the magnificence of the Christ. We're talking about the Christ expression, the glory of which is all you have to do is look up into the stars. Look up into the heavens. Those are representations of the magnificence of what is truly you, the Christ essence of who you are. You know, I used to think those were just words until I started experiencing it, until I started stepping into it, until I was brave enough to step up and say, I'm going to get rid of all those false, erroneous beliefs that I had about myself. Let me take a chance and do that. Because what I've been doing before isn't working for me. It isn't working for me. It might feel safe and cozy to play small. But guess what? That's not who you are. And it's not glorifying God to be small. It's not glorifying the magnificence of the Christ expression. These and greater things will you do, said the way shower, master teacher. These and greater things. And even in Jewish law, Jesus quoted, don't you know that you are God's? Don't you know, are you willing to accept your true identity? That was a tough one for me. That one was a tough one. Because I grew up Baptist, Jehovah's Witness, and Catholic. So I was cut off at the knee before I even had a chance to grow up. And now, I can truly say, without a doubt in my heart, that I know what the Christ presence is. I know what Jesus came here to do. And it wasn't to put us down. It wasn't that we needed a sacrifice because we were so torn up and damaged. Jesus came here to remind us who we are. Yeah. He came to remind you to let that expression come into full glory. That's what Jesus came here to do. You see, if each one of us would even go halfway there, there would be no thought of hurting another individual. You look out and you see the Christ expression as you are. Science has proven, not just recently, but for many, many years, that everything you see and everything you experience is a product of your own consciousness. It's your own consciousness. You live within your own consciousness. The impressions that you get from engaging in other people, the feeling responses, they're all very subjective. They're very personal. Many times people project those out and think, well, I know what they're thinking. And they separate themselves from another person. Jesus came here to tell us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That can only be said first person. I am. I make my own experiences. I am the creative force that empowers me to improve my life, to bring it to its highest and best good. That empowers me to change my perspective of the past. It empowers me to forgive for the future. Yeah. Forgive. To change my perspective from a loss to a lesson. From a loss to a lesson. Who can do that for me? Who can do that for me? No one goes to the Father except through me. I have the choice. I make the choice. I make the choice. That's the good news, folks. I make the choice. So when you encounter love, and you feel like that love has been taken back from you, Remind yourself where that love came from. Remind you where that dynamo of love is within your heart. The kingdom of heaven is within, said Jesus. If someone tells you it's here, lo, there, do not believe them. For the kingdom of heaven is within. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. See, Jesus' words over and over and over again empowers those who have ears to listen. Those who are willing to say, maybe, just maybe, that what I heard was not the truth. And what would prompt you to say that? The pain, maybe, the suffering that erroneous beliefs bring about? The hardship, the struggle in your life? Why do you have contentiousness in your life? Where's my peace gone? Have I forgotten who I am? Because as a child, when that little child, Anthony Manduck, was christened, I could see it in his eyes. He knew the indwelling Christ within him. He didn't know it here, he knew it in his heart. His very essence radiated the Christ presence of love. How fitting that that happened in this Advent time of the year. The Advent, where we are anticipating and expecting the birth of the Christ within each one of us. Have we forgotten that? Have we forgotten that? Are we willing to